You know, here at Covenant, we place a high value on the opportunities we have to touch the world around us. With our engagement in Vietnam and the opportunities that affords us. And sometimes things happen across the world, and with technology, you see things more quickly than normal. Things happen more rapidly, but sometimes there's still that disconnect we have, isn't it? That things that happen across the world, they don't affect us. They're not something that we have to worry about. But the fact of the matter is things happen across the world, and it's important for us to understand those things and what's going on around us at all times. This morning we get a glimpse. We're going to get a glimpse into some opportunity, a family that had an opportunity a year ago, and Phil was telling me this morning, to impact the world on the other side of the globe and impact a young lady's life on the other side of the globe. I want to invite Phil and Christy Graves to come up. Phil is the pastor of First Baptist Church, Brunswick, Maryland. Phil and Christy have been married 20 years. They have 5 kids. And we're going to hear a little bit about their most recent addition to their family. And as we talk to them this morning about what God has done in their family and what God continues to do. So Phil, good to see you. I actually have a personal connection to Phil. I preached at First Baptist Church, Brunswick the Sunday before you started. So I don't know if you knew that or not.
I think I...
Green light, yep.
It's red.
Green, there you go.
It was, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Okay.
At least I didn't remember.
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah.
You've been there quite a while. How many years you been in Brunswick?
I'm working on 12.
So 12 years ago. Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. So I think we may have some slides posted up. We've been having some difficulties this morning with of some of the things that they've gone through. But just talk to us real quickly about what drew you to the Ukraine and Brizzy.
Well, I have to give you a little backstory. So when Christy and I got married, we talked about adoption. But then we had our own biological children. We had Kara in 2004, Ethan in 2006, Owen in 2010. And in 2015, Christy came to me and said, you know, we talked about adopting a child when we were first married. And if we're going to do that, we should do it soon because we're getting old. And so we began the process of adopting. And some friends of ours in 2013 had adopted 2 boys from Ukraine who had Down syndrome. And so we were talking to them, and we asked them, you know, how did this happen? And they told us they found their boys on a website called Reese's Rainbow. And Reese's Rainbow was established by a mother who had a Down syndrome child naturally. And she had so much trouble finding services for her son that she's like, I wonder how people handle it in, you know, third world countries, Eastern Europe. And she discovered that kids with special needs were basically just given up and locked away in a lot of the world. And so she started this website for the intention of advocating for the international adoption of kids with special needs. Started with Down syndrome and then added other children as other people became interested. And since 2005, I think, is when she started it, they've brought home almost 3,000 kids. And so our friends told us about Reese's Rainbow, so we went on there and started looking at profiles, and we found a girl that our hearts were drawn to. But on Reese's Rainbow, it doesn't tell you where they are, so you have to inquire with the adoption agency, and then they tell you where they are.
Okay.
So we found Eliana, and she was in Armenia. We adopted her in 2017, and she has spina bifida. And what used to be us going to baseball practice and ballet was now doctor's appointments, surgeries, and therapies. Okay. And our hands were full. And then in 2021, Christy came to me and said, I think God wants us to adopt again. And I said, what? 4 is enough. She's like, I can't shake it. And so I told her I made a deal with God. Anytime he opened a window or a door, I would walk through it. And so she had seen Brizzy on the Reese's Rainbow Facebook page. A family had been planning to adopt her, and then they couldn't. So they relisted her. And as soon as I saw her, I knew she was my child. And I can't explain it to you other than that's my kid. And so we inquired about her and then found out she was in Ukraine. So with both our kids, it's been God showed us the child, and then we found out where they were.
Okay. So tell us a little about the story of getting to Brizzy and what God did in the middle of that, because there was some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Why don't you tell some of it, Christy?
Absolutely. Why don't you go?
All right.
He's the talker, Kevin.
So we saw her listing on Facebook. We inquired about her and began the process to adopt her. And then we discovered that she had been the feature on an Australian broadcasting company special, kind of like our Dateline NBC or something like that. The Australian broadcasting company did a story on the dark side of international surrogacy. So Brizzy's biological parents are Americans who couldn't have a baby. The dad was 39 and the mom was 60. And so they decided they wanted to have children, so they found a company in Ukraine because surrogacy and that is much cheaper in Ukraine than it is here. It's about half the cost. Okay. So they had 3 eggs that were implanted in the surrogate. It was the dad and then a donor egg, because the mom was 60.
Yeah.
So three embryos were implanted, and they all took. And so one was eliminated early in the pregnancy, and then at 25 weeks, Brizzy and her brother had to be born because of some complications with the surrogate. So her brother died after 6 days, and they thought she would be profoundly disabled if she even lived. So her parents, her American parents, decided they weren't going to take her, and they went on to do another surrogacy, and they got twin boys from that. Well, about the time they were getting the twin boys, they discovered that Brizzy had lived, and they were given the option, and they just decided they couldn't handle it all together, so they allowed the government of Ukraine to put her up for adoption.
Okay. Cool. So what was, so all this is happening, all these things are happening, Brizzy's opportunities, but then y'all find out what, in late 2022?
No, we found it in 2021, all this story.
Yeah,
what
but
had
everything's coming together that
Yeah.
you're going to be having the opportunity.
Yeah.
When we started this adoption, we were also told,
Okay,
we were told
there we go.
that it would be a 6 to 9 month process. So we're like, oh, yay, this is going to be fast, And Eliana's adoption took 16 months, so we were really excited that this was going to be a fast one. But at least, needless to say, it did not work out that way. But in early 2021 is when we found out. We thought we were going to go in January to get her, and our judge had COVID, and Brizzy had some citizenship issues, so it didn't end up happening. And we were just nervous and waiting and waiting and waiting. And we were expecting to get a court date. What day was it? February 25th. And if you all have been following the Ukrainian war, Russia declared war on Ukraine February 24th. And at that point, we were devastated.
In 2012, the Russians stopped allowing Americans to adopt. And so we were worried that if Russia took over Ukraine, which, listen, let's be honest, everybody thought it was going to be over in just a couple days. We were worried that we would never be able to get her. And we had actually met her in December of 2021. That's right. So when I tell you that she was our child before we met her, after we met her, she was like definitely our child.
We told her we were coming back.
Yeah, we told her we were coming back. And because of Brizzy's popularity on the world stage with the story about her, after we'd met her, we'd been contacted by a journalist from the German magazine Der Spiegel, and he said that he wanted to come with us when we went back to get her to do a story. Well, when the war started, he called me and said, I need to come talk to you. And I was like, okay, when do you want to come? He said, I'll be there tomorrow. And I'm like, where are you coming from? He's like, I'm in St. Petersburg, Russia right now.
Oh, wow.
And so he caught a plane and came to our house the next day and spent 3 weeks with us talking about, like, how is this impacting you? What are you going to do? And he was also like, why don't you call this person? Why don't you call this person? And I was like, I don't feel like I should. I mean, they're fighting for their country, and I don't want to be like, I need my kid, I need my kid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I need my kid, I need my kid. So I contacted the director of the orphanage, and she told me that they were sheltering at the orphanage. I contacted the guy who was like the main donor to the orphanage, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, because he was in like Belgium. And then I was also given the contact information for a woman who had been President Zelensky's press secretary up until like right before the war. And she's like, I can't help you. I don't have any power. And so we were just praying and hoping, and we did a prayer vigil at our church. The article from Der Spiegel came out. The journalist was with us for 3 weeks. He stayed around 3 weeks. And I don't know what he did. I mean, he would talk to me, we'd have lunch, but I don't know what he was doing the other times. But then what happened was an amazing miracle of God. Because, so I didn't mention, there's a woman named Marina Boyko who was a nurse at the hospital where Brizzy was when she was first born. And Marina fell in love with Brizzy and took extra care of her. And once she was well enough to go to the orphanage, she would go and visit Brizzy in the orphanage. And she raised money to take Brizzy to therapies outside of the orphanage. And she just became basically her de facto mom. But she couldn't adopt her. So Marina spent 5 years trying to find someone to adopt Brizzy. She tried with her original family, and they didn't respond, and she reached out to so many people. Well, when we decided to adopt her, because I found out about her through the story, I found her on Facebook, and friend requested her, and so she was giving us all this kind of information about Brizzy, and she would go visit Brizzy in the orphanage, and there were a couple times we were able to FaceTime. One time, we were talking to her. We got up early in the morning, like 5 in the morning, because that's when Marina could be at the orphanage. And we were talking. Timothy, the journalist, was there, so he was interpreting for us. And Marina said, we have to go. The air raid sirens just went off. And it was like, and then it just went, she hung up.
Yeah.
So uncertainty, fear, but trusting in God. So it came to be mid-April, and Christy and her mom and our daughter Kara had planned to go to California for Kara's spring break as our graduation gift to her. She was graduating from high school. And so Christy and Kara and Janice, Christy's mom, had gone to California. And I got a message from Marina saying, the judge said he will let you come to court and get Brizzy. And I said, what? You know there's a war going on, right? She said, he will let you come. You just need to tell us when you can get here.
Yeah.
And so Marina has no power in the adoption process at all. So I contacted our adoption facilitator, with our adoption agency, and I'm like, I just got told that we could go to court. And our facilitator said, what? There's a war going on there. I'm like, I know. So she's like, let me check. I told her what Marina had said, and she said, let me check with Alex, who is the in-country facilitator. So she called him, and then she called right back. She's right. You need to tell them when you can come. You can come anytime between, I think it was April 25th and May 9th, or May 10th. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. Christy's on a plane. We're obviously going to go, but I don't know when or how. So I waited until Christy got to where they were going, and I'm like, Christy, we can go get Brizzy. She's like, what? And so while she was in California, I was working out all the details. I didn't want to go May 10th because May 9th was the celebration of Russian victory in World War II, and there was a thought that Putin would do something so that he could declare victory in Ukraine. So I was like, as soon as we can go, we're going to go. So Christy got home on a Sunday. and we left to go to Ukraine on a Tuesday.
Wow.
A friend of mine from high school had agreed to pay our airfare. She had covered all our airfare with Eliana. So I let her know, and she's like, yep. And so she made the flight plans for us. We had to fly to Poland because you can't fly into Ukraine because of the war. So I called Timothy, the journalist from Der Spiegel. I said, we're going to get her. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, you can't tell anybody, but we're going to get her. He's like, what can I do? So he met us in Warsaw at the airport and picked us up and drove us to the border. We spent the night and the next morning got up and went to the Polish border, and we had to hitchhike across the border.
Wow.
Because Timothy's a Russian Russian citizen, so he couldn't go into Ukraine without causing all kinds of trouble for us.
Oh my.
Because you don't want to be in Ukraine with a Russian,
Yeah.
at least right now. And our adoption facilitator couldn't leave Ukraine to come get us because he's a Ukrainian male of military age, so they can't leave.
Yeah.
So we hung around for about an hour and a half trying to get someone to give us a ride across the border. They wouldn't let us walk. Well, we finally found a truck driver who was willing to take us, but then we discovered that his truck was full of body armor, and so the Poles were going to check it all, the Ukrainians were going to check it all, and we would have been there for 2 days.
Wow.
So we finally got a ride in a Red Cross van. And the Red Cross guy didn't speak English, I didn't speak Polish, and there was no Wi-Fi for translation until we got to the border, and then I picked up a Wi-Fi signal, and so I was able to get us into Ukraine, and our facilitator picked us up. We pulled out of the border, and he was standing in the middle of the road
Oh, wow.
because he knew we were in a Red
Yeah.
Cross van. So he picked us up and drove us across the country to Kyiv. And we passed, like every so often there were, I guess they didn't get the
Yeah,
pictures up.
we-
Every so often there were barricades with soldiers to just, mostly it was just to slow you down so they could look in your car.
Yeah.
But the closer we got to Kyiv, the worse it got as far as buildings blown up, gas stations blown up. Our facilitator said the Russians blew up every gas station they saw. There was a Mary Kay factory near Kyiv. Who knew Mary Kay was in Ukraine? But that factory had been hit. There was a bridge going over a river that had been taken out. So we had to go down around, go across a temporary bridge to get back up on the freeway. The freeway was littered with potholes and stuff from artillery, destroyed homes. We got into Kyiv, went to dinner, and then went to our facilitator's apartment to get freshened up. Went to a grocery store to get some food because we were taking a night train to Brizzy City, which is near where the nuclear power plant they've been fighting over is. It's like 50 miles away, called Zaporizhia. And by the way, on the way, while we were in the car going to Kyiv, I got email from the U.S. Embassy saying, hey, we heard you're going to Ukraine. That's a really bad idea. and I emailed back, yeah, we're already here. And I was afraid they were going to tell us to turn around.
Yeah.
But after a few exchanges, they were like, be safe, stay away from the Russians, because if they capture you, it won't be good.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know. And so they said, anything we can do to help you, let us know.
Yeah.
So we were freshening up in the apartment. We came downstairs to go out, and I had heard a bang, and I thought it was the elevator shaking in the shaft. But we went outside, and there was smoke rising from about half a kilometer away, and it ended up that the Russians had hit an apartment complex with 2 missiles. And so that's when it kind of got real. So there was a photographer with us, because Der Spiegel wanted to follow us. He sped off to go to that, because it's happening
take pictures
news.
of that, yeah.
We went to the train station, got on a train, and went down to Brizzy City. Now let me just tell you, you guys remember COVID, right? The pandemic that we just came through?
No.
During COVID, adoptions were still being allowed to happen. And so what they would do is they would have virtual court. The American parents would be on the screen, the judge would be on the other side of the screen, and they would do all the process, and then the people were allowed to then go to Ukraine, get the kid, and come right back. So we asked before we left, can we do a virtual court? No. Because COVID, very scary. You don't want to take the risks. With Russians, they're just Russians, right? So why don't you both come? We know you have 4 other kids.
Yeah.
Just come over here anyway.
Yeah.
So we went to court on the 28th? No, the 29th.
29th. You're
She
going
became
yesterday.
our official child legally. Then we took the train back to Kyiv, got in the car, and Marina came with us. And then we drove back to Western Ukraine to Lviv to pick Brizzy up on the 30th.
So 1 year today, we were crossing the border into Poland, and we announced on Facebook what we had done because we kept it off of social media because nobody wants to broadcast on Americans in Ukraine. So it's actually 1 year today that she was with us, and we were on our way to Poland.
There we go. Got some pictures up
Yeah,
there.
so can you go back? I'm sorry. There was no instructions. I didn't send any instructions about the pictures. Can you go back to like the one after the war slide?
See if we can get that.
So these are some of the barricades that we saw. This was in Zaporizhia. And then this is a staged photo of us at the train station. Because the photographer had gone, so he wasn't with us on the trip. So he met us there and he's like, let's take some pictures by the train. And then this is the apartment building that had gotten hit by the missiles. The photographer gave us that. We didn't go there. And then this is a tank that we saw coming in to Kyiv. And then we stopped on the way back out of Kyiv to get our picture taken with it. For those of you who were born back in the 1900s and remember the movie Red Dawn, on the turret there and on the back of it, someone had spray painted Wolverines. This is us. As we were coming into Kyiv, we met the photographer. Behind us is a blown up restaurant.
Wow.
We were also told to stay away from any roadside stuff out of the woods because they were afraid there were still landmines that we might get a hold of.
And then this is us in court. While we were waiting for court to start, the air raid sirens went off, and the judge came and said, would you like to go shelter in the basement until the air raid sirens go off? And I looked around the courtroom. There was like the court recorder was looking at her phone. Our adoption facilitator was looking at his phone. I'm like, is anybody else going to go? And they're like, no. And so we're like, all right, we'll just stay here. And then this is Marina with Brizzy when we first got to go to pick her up. I'm so grateful for Marina because she loves Brizzy and allowed Brizzy to have that relationship with her. And having Marina with us at the orphanage helped Brizzy be more calm because she knew Marina and was comfortable going with Marina.
Yeah.
And so us just showing up and being like, we're mom and dad, you're going with us. Like, look at me. You don't want to go with me. So this is our first picture as a family outside of the temporary orphanage. And then we went to Poland, and we were in Poland for 12 days. We got Brizzy out of Ukraine without a passport. And let me just tell you something. Christy mentioned a few minutes ago that there were some citizenship issues with Brizzy. I don't know when they would have ever been fixed because she had American parents, but she was born to Ukrainian surrogate. And we were waiting for that all to be worked out. When the war happened, the paperwork we were waiting to get filled out, just sitting on someone's desk. It's probably still sitting on someone's desk. But because we were able to adopt her, get her out of Ukraine with just the adoption paperwork, we got an emergency visa in Poland from the U.S. Embassy, brought her to the United States, and when we got here, she became an American citizen as soon as we landed because of the paperwork we'd done prior to going.
Wow.
So God used Russia to solve our citizenship issues with
Wow. That's pretty cool. Tell
And
us,
then this
go
is-
ahead, tell me about your
Sorry,
family.
then this is our 5 children, Kara, Ethan, Owen, Eliana, and Brizzy. Let me just point out, can you go back? I'm sorry, I keep making you go back. So when we first got Brizzy, she has cerebral palsy and clubbed feet. So her feet were pointed and turned in. Brizzy couldn't stand on her own, but if you did help her stand, her left ankle, she would have sideways, and that's where she would bear her weight. It looked so painful.
And our teens know their oldest daughter because at Reboot this past January, our teens got to hang out with her. And she's going to be back at Skycroft this summer working. So our teens got to play a crazy card game with her and had a great time with her. And did some other things. Tell us about your church and how your church and other followers of Christ helped you guys in this process.
So when we adopted Eliana, we had to, it's about $35,000, $40,000 to adopt a child internationally. I don't know what it costs domestically, probably a little less than that. We borrowed some money from Christy's retirement, and we did all kinds of fundraisers to raise the money to get her. And when Christy said this time, I was like, I don't want to raise money, I don't want to borrow money, and I don't want to do fundraisers. So I was like, if we're going to do this, God's going to have to come through in a big way. So the first amount you need is about $10,000. So I did a fundraiser on Facebook. Said, hey, we're adopting again. We need 10 grand. Within just a few days, 10 grand came in. People were so generous. People around the country. People from our church, very gracious, very kind, praying for us, supporting us, because they knew how busy we were with just Eliana, and so we thought they were going to think we were crazy for doing it again. But they were so excited.
That's awesome.
They were so excited.
We also have a lot of contacts with people, pastors at other churches, just from being in this association for a long time.
Yeah.
And my best friend is Chrissa Beard, and her husband is the pastor, Jay Beard, at First Baptist Church in Thurmont. And having them as support and prayer, and their community, their church community lifted us up. And then I'm a part of a prayer group that Faith Baptist in Knoxville is heavily attended, and they were lifting us up. And when we didn't even know how many people were praying for us. It was too many to count. We didn't come out and say, hey, we're going to Ukraine on social media, please pray for us. But we were able to let key people know, to let their churches know to pray for us while we're there. And it was huge. When we were there, Phil mentioned, it didn't get real until we were in Kyiv and the missile strike. I think about the peace and the calm that I had while we were there. And I know God brought us here. I know that he's going to be faithful. He didn't bring us to Ukraine to get blown up for our children to be orphaned when we were trying to save an orphan. But it wasn't until we were in Poland and we took a deep breath and we're like, oh my goodness, what did we just do for the last 4 days? We're insane. We really are insane. I know my mother was very afraid for us, and she is a person of faith too, and she was very, very scared because she's thinking my daughter and my son-in-law are going to get blown up and I'm going to be with her children raising them. But we just, that's what she's afraid of. But Phil and I just had this peace from the very beginning, from okay, we're going. We're like, this is really weird. I didn't expect to be going during a war, but all those prayers were really felt. And I'm guessing maybe even your church was one of the ones praying for us.
Made people aware of
And
it.
there was just so many people. And after the fact, I kept hearing, we were praying for your church. Our church was praying for you while you were in Ukraine. And it was very much felt.
That's awesome.
So I know you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
One more.
It was really scary to leave our other children, but think about the fact that if one of your children was stuck behind enemy lines and you knew the only way you could get them is if you went yourself, you would all go.
Yeah.
If you're a parent, you would absolutely go. So you might think we're crazy. We are. We adopted 2 kids after we already had 3. But she's our child, and we had to go get her. There wasn't even a question if we were going to go.
That's awesome.
I just said, we're going. And the thing that I've learned to appreciate since getting back and having time to reflect on it is I now understand why Jesus leaves the 99 to go after the one. Because I knew my kids here were safe. I knew they had people that loved them, people who were looking out for them. But my child who was at risk, I had to get her. There was like this compulsion.
Yeah.
I can't describe it as like this desperation to go there and get her. And then when we were finally in Poland, it was like, okay. And then I was anxious to get home, back to my other children.
That's awesome. Awesome story. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being a part of our service today. We will, Phil and Christy and their two daughters that are here this morning will be out in the foyer after the service if y'all want to come by and talk to them a little bit more. Thank you for this, and thank you for all that the way you've opened our eyes to see this opportunities that are out there.
Can I say one more thing?
Maybe.
If you are in any way capable of adopting a child, would you pray that God would put that on your heart to do? You have a church right here that will support you. Mm-hmm. And if God's called you to adopt a child, he'll provide the money. We did not have $40,000 laying around. Mm-hmm. But I could tell you story after story after story of how God provided when we needed it. And God's continued to be faithful. We've been struggling financially adding Brizzy to our family because of the extra cost for medical and stuff. Christy just got a significant raise at work that was unexpected. And it's just God blessing us for our obedience to him. That's one other thing. We are not heroes. We did not do anything spectacular other than be obedient to God's call in our life. And so, now I'll be quiet.
Okay, you're all good. Thank you, guys.
It's the pastor.
I get you. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate you.